Okay. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for coming into the webinar today. My name is Jadus Hay. I'm the owner of Jada Corp. We're a managed IT service provider in Burbank, California. We provide secure, scalable, and sustainable IT solutions for entrepreneurs, startups, and small and to mid-sized businesses. I'm a Coast Guard veteran. I'm also a former Department of Energy emergency responder. So some of the notable ones I did, we went to Fukushima after the tsunami there, and then also Hurricane Sandy on the East Coast. So if you run into me at a networking thing, I've got a lot of stories from that. So just hit me up. Okay, so today we're going over business continuity and disaster recovery. So throughout this presentation, we're going to go over some different types of disasters, what the potential impacts are on your business, the benefits of having a disaster preparedness plan with your IT security, what the basics of a disaster preparedness action plan are, and best practices for effective IT disaster recovery. And then we're going to go through a few scenarios. So different types of disasters that can affect your business. We've of course got natural disasters. This is your fires, your floods, your tornadoes. So that can damage your IT infrastructure. It can disrupt your communication. It could disrupt your power supplies. There's a lot of things that it could affect for your physical location. We've also got health threats. The most notable one that comes to mind is, of course, COVID, where all of a sudden everybody had to work from home, and a lot of businesses didn't have proper planning in place to get that done. So I had a lot of work during that time. You've also got cyber attacks. If you get hit by a phishing or a malware attack, it can compromise your IT systems. You can lose access to your data and lead to theft, downtime, and financial loss for your business. You've got power outages where power goes out in your office block or at home, which we had in conjunction with the wildfires recently. So that was a little double whammy for us here. And then you've also got equipment failures where your server crashes, your hardware malfunctions, which can also lead to data loss and downtime. And then you've got the human element as well. So people can spill things on their computer, they can spill things on the server. You can have also malicious actors trying to purposefully delete your data. Your outgoing HR director decides to delete all of your personnel files on their way out, which I've seen before. And you need to be prepared for that and have proper recovery measures in place. So potential impacts on your business, if there's some sort of weather event or other event affecting your physical location, you've got risks to your employee safety. You can experience data loss or experience a breach where an attacker is stealing your valuable data. You've got infrastructural and inventory damage. It can damage your office buildings. It can damage your inventory of equipment. It can also affect your server rooms and other IT infrastructure that you have physically in your office. You can experience business interruptions, lost working days, increased downtime and productivity loss. It can just destabilize your business. You can also have financial losses and increased expenses due to damage to your property. You've got to replace all that hardware that gets damaged during the event. And you can also incur repair and material costs if it's also disrupting your supply chain. And you also suffer reputational damage. So anytime you get data, have an experience a data breach, it can affect the way that your customers view you, because if they're handing over sensitive data to you and you're not able to protect it, that's a pretty big red flag for a lot of companies, especially if you're a smaller vendor working with larger companies. So the benefits of disaster preparedness. So I got stuck a little bit there. So with the proper tools and procedures in place, you can ensure business continuity, which is the most significant benefit. So even if you do experience one of these events, you can migrate your operations to a secondary location. You can keep all your systems running and continue to work and communicate with your customers. It protects against data loss. So in the example of the HR manager deleting everything on their way out, you're able to recover that without too much disruption to your workflows. Reduces your recovery time because you're able to resume your operations as quickly as possible. So even if you require your physical location to work, say you're a manufacturer or some kind of trade work, at least if you have your back office up and running, you're still communicating with customers, you're still getting your invoices out, you're still handling your financial tasks. It avoids reputational damage because if you're up, uh, you're still providing your services to your customers. They know that they can rely on you to always be there for them. And if you have compliance requirements, it can improve your uh, if you have compliance requirements, if you might experience penalties for not meeting certain like uptime or protecting sensitive data that's in your organization. Okay, so the basic parts of a disaster preparedness action plan. First, you need to identify likely scenarios. You need to list out the types of disasters that you're most likely to experience and that could hurt your business. And then you start developing your plan. You assign roles and responsibilities to your employees and in some cases your vendors. You prepare an evacuation policy, emergency contact inventory list, and communication response procedures. And then you need to define what an acceptable recovery time is for your critical business functions. So depending on what you do, it might be okay if it takes a couple days to get everything back up. But if you're some kind of like critical vendor to someone, you might need to be back up, within, a few hours or even a day. And then you need to implement and train everyone on the plan. Uh, you need to make sure that everyone understands what their roles are in the plan and what they need to do once it's activated. And you need to consistently back up your business sensitive data. And then perhaps most importantly, you need to regularly test and update your plan because things change in your business. You may need to add new tools. You may need to update roles and responsibilities for who's doing what in the plan, those sorts of things. Okay. So one of the most important things you can do as part of disaster preparedness is that you need to implement robust security measures. You need to try to minimize the amount of damage that an event likely has on your business. You need to regularly back up your critical data, and you need to regularly conduct employee training on what their roles are in the plan, as well as what they need to do once it's activated. Okay. You also need to assess the preparedness for your vendors, because if you're up but one of your critical vendors is down, that can also disrupt your operations. It might prevent you from getting your services out to your customer. So you need to make sure that either they have something that can support you, or you need to make sure that you have backup vendors in case something happens to that primary vendor. You need to regularly test and improve your disaster preparedness plan, and you need to review your insurance policies to make sure that you're meeting all the requirements for it so that if you do need to file a claim, that you don't run into any issues with that. Okay, so we're going to go through a few scenarios. So the first one and the one that is most recent was the recent wildfires in Los Angeles. So we actually had customers who their business were not in the evacuation zone, but they were right on the edge of it. And some of them had to evacuate their homes. Had to evacuate their homes. So thankfully, I was able to. We had all these plans and procedures in place. so that we were able to communicate with them, don't worry about your business operations, don't worry about your data, focus on getting your family employees to safety. And if we need to, we can spin you up, depending on what the plan is. We can spin you up at an alternate location if your physical one is damaged, or we could have everyone work remotely if we need to. So they're able to continue operations, no matter, what happened with the fires. And then scenario two, so these are two major IT security events from 2021. There was the Colonial Pipeline and then also Fujifilm. So Colonial Pipeline, I'm not sure if anyone remembers, since the news seems to move so fast now. But in 2021, the Colonial Pipeline company, they were struck by a ransomware attack. They didn't have adequate security measures in place. The attackers were able to get in through an unused VPN account and able to spread throughout the network and spread a ransomware throughout the network and take down their operations. And because they were critical infrastructure, the effects were pretty immediate. There were gas shortages throughout the southeastern United States. The FBI had to get involved because their business continuity plan and measures weren't robust enough to be able to recover, as quickly as they needed to as a piece of critical infrastructure. And they ended up paying the ransom. And even with paying the ransom and, relying on the inadequate backups they had, they were still down for about 2 weeks before they got back up. And during that time, there were gas shortages, there were long lines, the price spiked, throughout the country, and it was just a big mess. But also that same year, Fujifilm suffered a ransomware attack a month later. But in contrast to Colonial Pipeline, they had proper security measures and proper backups. So they were able to determine the extent of the breach. They figured out nothing critical was taken or affected. So they restored from their own backups and didn't pay the ransom. So they were still down for about 2 weeks out of caution while they went through and checked every system. But they actually had a proper business continuity plan and they were able to recover without external help. And then scenario three, these are a few events that we've experienced with our customers. So we had one customer who in their building, they were on the bottom floor of a building and someone moved into the space above them and they were doing some renovations and they hit a water line and it spilled water through the ceiling into their server room, took out their server equipment. But thankfully, because we had the proper appliance there, which Jason will talk about a little bit later, we were able to virtualize their servers on-prem. They were able to continue operations while we got the backup hardware in place and restored everything from the offsite backups that we had through Datto. And they were back up and running within a couple of weeks, and they didn't experience any, barely any downtime, just a couple of hours while we got everything set up. And then we also have a customer, they're a small medical office, and they were running everything on the doctor's desktop. So he had all his practice management software in there. He had his medical note taking software, everything he needed to run his office. And I had talked to him on multiple business reviews, like, hey, we need to split this off into something separate. And, they didn't want to do it, which was okay. But then one night, the cleaning person knocked over his desktop and broke it, and it wouldn't boot. So thankfully, we had a device to on site that we could load the backup onto and have his desktop backup within about an hour, I think it was. But if we didn't have that, it would have taken him, months to get everything set back up and get his data back to where it was. And then after that, we finally convinced him to get the separate device. Okay, so some consequences. 60% of small businesses go out of business within 6 months of a major incident, just due to all the costs associated with it. You're losing business, you're losing reputation, and it takes you time and effort to restore everything that was lost in the attack. So all that together, it's a very big financial hit for small businesses, and a lot of them don't make it out of that. So you can ask yourself, how long can your business last without access to your critical data? If you don't have access to your vendor lists, to your pending invoices, to your operational data, and then also what kind of reputation do you get with your customers when you're having operational trouble? If you're constantly down, if you can't answer the phone, if you can't answer emails, people are just going to move on to your competitors who are still working. Okay. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jason from Datto. So the core part of our disaster recovery strategies are the backups, and we rely on Datto for that because they have the best solution that I've found that we're able to scale to whatever size customer that we're dealing with. And they've got a lot of really cool features, and just a great partner to work with. So I'm going to stop sharing. And then, yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Jadis, for that introduction. Happy to be here today to go over business continuity and answer any questions you guys may have. I know it could be a complex subject, but hopefully by the end of this presentation, you guys are going to be well aware of what's out there and how we're able to help you guys out. So, Jason Pryce, Senior Children Development Manager at Kaseya, and let's get started. So Kaseya owns Datto. Datto is the backup company who has been doing this for the last 17 years. Started off in Connecticut, so I'm an East Coast guy myself. By the way, we have the best pizza. So if you guys are pizza fans, come to Connecticut. We'll get you going. But we have over 1 million users in counting. We have over 20 global locations. And we're doing tons of different testing per month around disaster recovery. So we also have 100% US based customer support. So we have the people present that are able to help resolve any issues with Jadis and his team. So the most important asset your business has is this data, right? You may have inventory of this, you may have, different services you offer, but at the end of the day, data is what drives everything. And this is the biggest the biggest threat to data is going to be things like Jadis mentioned earlier. You have your fires, your floods, your tornadoes, right? Those are the big things we think about. However, a lot of times it's going to be those other items that you have to think about, right? It's going to be, user error. It's going to be situations where you have, equipment failure. It's going to be, different compliance and regulations that you have to adhere to. These are all the things that are going to be threats to your data. So most businesses are struggling with the same things, though, as it pertains to data and backing up and making sure your data is protected. So, first and foremost, data lives in way more places than it's ever lived before, right? If you go into to work, you may be using one system for one application. You might be using a web-based application for another purpose, and all this data is living in different places, and it can be hard to inventory and monitor and manage where that data actually is, right? It's also very time consuming to go through the process of managing all that data in different disparate systems. Backup is also way more complex, right? And through that complexity, if not handled correctly, can lead to a ton of manual issues that can occur, which can cause data loss, right? So one of the things I think about a lot is people who have been, in business for a while, and they understood that we should be backing up data. And so what people would do, for instance, is they'll back up, their computers once a week to a hard drive. They would take that hard drive on a Friday, leave with it, put it in a safe at home, and then bring it back in on Monday, right? That was backup, right? And unfortunately, that may have worked 20 years ago, but it doesn't work today, right? The amount of data change that we see on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, and depending on how transactional you are, on a minute by minute basis, is just too much to be able to do that from a manual standpoint. You would never get ahead of the data. So it just doesn't work anymore, right? And typically, backup can be pretty expensive, and it can be something where you don't have as much flexibility. So the thing is, everybody in this call today, there are things that you're trying to solve for, right? When I say, hey, what challenges are you having, right? Some of you may say, hey, you know what? In our industry, we're in financial, we need to meet this new compliance and regulatory standards. And I can't do it on my own, right? I need help. I need to figure out, how do I maintain this data? How do I preserve this data? How long do I have to keep it? Is it 3 years, 5 years, 7 years? What's that retention period looking like, right? Is it because you have different backup solutions in play and you're saying, okay, I need to streamline and just make this, something where it's just easier to access, right? There could be the, hey, you know what? I saw the news. I saw these different things that have happened, whether it been at Fuji Films, as Jadus mentioned, or with the Colonial Pipeline. And I need to make sure that the system that I have is able to get up and running very quickly in the event of a disaster, right? So everybody on this call will have different reasonings, for trying to get a better understanding of where you are in terms of the preservation of data. And hopefully, once again, by the end of this call, you will have a better understanding of that. So let's talk about you, right? So first off, let's talk about strategy, right? So the questions that I would ask is, what are you currently doing today for backup, right? Are you the person that I mentioned a moment ago who's taking that hard drive, plugging it in, backing it up, taking it home every day? Are you just counting on, the system to always be up and you're just rolling the dice, right? Where are you now? Let's to figure out where you need to be, right? Are there backup copies sent offsite, right? So if you have a solution like a hard drive that you plug in every day, is it automatically backing up? Is it automatically offsetting to another environment? Is it doing a test of those backups to make sure that those backups are valuable in the case of a disaster? Right? In the case of a ransomware, right? What does recovery look like for you today? You walk into your office, you go to use your computer, and then you have a big message on your screen that says "Hey, you have been ransomed. In order to get your data back, we need $10,000 in Bitcoin." Right? What does that look like? What is your next step? Right? How do you react? Who do you call? Right? These are the questions that you need to be figuring out, right? We mentioned the compliance standards, right? Things are always changing, things are always evolving. Connecticut, New York, California, these places are ahead of the game in a lot of respect and regards when it comes to compliance standards, right? Are you keeping up? Are you following where the laws are taking us, right? Because it's easier to keep up than to catch up, right? What type of data applications are you using, right? How many locations are it in? Is it something where you just have on-prem servers? Are you using like the public cloud like Azure or AWS, right? And then, what does that purchase process look like, right? So this is not something that's just easy that you just figure out in a second. There are a lot of things that we need to uncover and figure out to determine the best type of solution that we have for you, right? So what we want to do at Datto is we want to take this complex series of needs and make it very simple and very easy for you to understand, to digest, and to understand the full framework of what we're able to do in terms of preserving your data, right? Once again, we talked about data living in different places. At Datto, we have different solutions that can protect data no matter where it lives. So once again, if you have on-prem servers, if you have public cloud, you have a laptop, things of that nature, we have different solutions that we can tie together and make work together to make sure that we're backing up and saving and preserving all of your data, once again, no matter where it lives. So this graph right here, I like it because it shows you a couple things, right? It shows you on the very bottom, you have mission support and then you have mission critical. Mission support is if you have a disaster, right? Mission support means that you have a backup. You should be good to go. It may take a couple of days. However, you should be fine. Versus mission critical, right? Mission critical means that, hey, we need to get back up in minutes, an hour might be too late, right? And so what this is showing is that as you move to get more mission critical, right? Typically you will see like the cost start to go up. um, and it's important to say that every single business has different needs, right? If you are a baker, right, and you may be able to be down for 3 days a week, right, and you're still able to know your normal customers, know the normal inventory that you need to provide for them, be able to know the delivery routes, and you might be able to get away with being down for a week. But if you're an accountant during tax season, you're dealing with people's financials, things of that nature, it might be something where you need to be up once again as quickly as possible. So I'm going to show this a easier, a more simple way, utilizing this right here. So this right here um, is showing you RPO and RTO. RPO is recovery point objective. RTO is recovery time objective. So what RPO does is it looks at this. You walk in once again, same scenario. You have the blue screen of death, or you have ransomware message, or whatever the case may be. Your computer is not working. RPO is when was the last backup? Was it 5 minutes ago? Was it an hour ago? Was it a day ago? Was it a week ago? Right? All of that matters dependent on the type of business you have. If it's highly transactional, an hour might be, 5,000 different transactions that happen. Losing that hour could be crippling, right? Versus losing, let's say, 5 minutes. On the flip side, once again, RTO, recovery time objective. If something happens where that system is down, how quickly can I get back up and running? Right? I'm talking about the computer isn't working. I need to continue to be productive. I need to continue to have my employees working, right? Is it something that I send them home for the day, right, and expect to get up and running the next day? Or is it something that I can call Jadus and be able to have my systems back up and running within 30 minutes, right? And so ideally, you want both the recovery point objective and the recovery time objective to be as close to that disaster as possible, right? And that way you minimize the amount of data that you're losing and you minimize the amount of downtime and therefore the inefficiencies that are happening with being downtime, right? The losses. So one of the things that we love talking about is resiliency of our cloud. It is a purpose built for backup and recovery. We have global data centers across the world. What for you on this call, you probably be more concerned that we have two data centers in the United States. We have one which is on the East Coast in Reading, Pennsylvania, and then we have one in Salt Lake City. And so what we do is we make sure that we have redundancy even within our own system, right? So as we're taking a backup of your computer, we're also sending that back up to our primary data center. And then just to make sure that that data is secure, we're sending it to another data center as well. So your data essentially lives on four different devices, including the server or computer that we're protecting. We have two-factor authentication. It's air gapped, which means that doing something on premise to our devices will not impact you in the cloud. We also have cloud deletion defense, which is a way that we make sure that the bad guys aren't able to get on to your data set, which lives within our data center, and therefore they aren't able to do deletions and things of that nature because one of the first things that the bad guys do is they want to delete your backups, right? They want to make sure that you are going to pay, right? We have your data. We want $10,000, and guess what? We deleted your backups as well. So we have systems in place to make sure that that doesn't happen. So for your on-premise workloads, right, we're using our Datto appliances, right? So these are like these servers. Look at the bottom of the screen, right? We're able to do backups as often as every 5 minutes. We use military grade encryption, both when the data is on the devices, but also when the data is in transit as well. We also use multi-factor authentication. And once again, we have our own private data center, and it is actually one of the largest private data centers in the world, or private clouds in the world. So let me show you what that looks like. So we have your systems, which are on premise. They can be virtual systems, they can be, regular servers. And essentially, we're backing it up to that appliance. From there, we do a couple things. We take a screenshot of the system booted up. So I didn't mention this before, and I'll show it to you in the next slide, but we're taking a full image of your entire system so that we're able to boot your system on this Cirrus appliance, and you were able to work from that environment. So if your hard drive failed, not a problem. If your computer got stolen, not a problem. If you had ransomware, not a problem, right? And so we're doing a screenshot verification to prove that in the event of a disaster, we would be able to get you booted up. We do offsite replication to our cloud, as I mentioned a moment ago. We're able to virtualize once again, either on the appliance. Virtualize means that we're able to take that data and actually boot it for you. But we're also able to do it in the cloud as well. So this slide right here is gonna just simplify it a little bit more for everybody. We have your computer. That computer gets ransomed. We're able to then back it up, or because we've been backing it up on the Datto appliance, we're able to actually boot that computer in a good format right off that Datto appliance. But let's say it was something where it was one of those fires, right? Unfortunately, right? And all the computers, the whole office, everything, was compromised in that fire. What we're able to do is we are able to boot directly from the private cloud, and you're able to get up and running in the same manner as you would have had you not lost your office. So we have so many layers of redundancy to make sure that you're able to get back up and running in a quick manner. So this right here is just showing you pretty much how simple it is. So the systems that we're backing up, we're able to do whether it be a file restore or a virtualization or a VMD export, VHD export. We can do a whole bunch of different things, but we're going to just focus on file restore or local virtualization. You get to choose a recovery point. A recovery point is a backup. So if you're doing a backup every 5 minutes, in the course of a day, you could potentially have hundreds of little tiny backups. You get to choose a different point that you would like to virtualize or make live. And then within a couple minutes, you're actually up and running within that system. We also have great reporting as well, so you can actually see all the different backup attempts. Anytime there's any sort of issue, if we detect a ransomware within your data set, all of that is nice, easy, reportable for you so you can understand what's going on. This may even be very important when you're talking about cybersecurity insurance, and once again, compliance regulation as well, to make sure that you have all this information saved and recorded. We understand that more and more people are, moving towards like, Azure. And it's seen great acceleration over the last couple of years, especially since COVID. And I think that it's like like a 300 or 400% increase in the last like 3 or 4 years. So it's pretty crazy. But there's this thought process that Azure is going to be safer because it's with Microsoft's cloud, which is not the case. We still see a huge amount of compromises per day coming out of Azure, right? And so the idea is that just because it's in Azure doesn't mean that you don't back it up. We have a solution in place that we can back up any of your data that is currently living in Azure, right? And so it's done in a nice, secure way. It takes the data out of Azure and puts it into our own private data center. So once again, we can get that redundancy. This is important. I know Microsoft has their own backup capability for Azure, but what you don't ever want to do is you don't want to trust the person that's giving you the infrastructure to also back up the infrastructure. So you always want to go third party and have somebody else be able to deliver that service. We also have solutions for remote and distributed servers. So if you have, somebody with a laptop that's always on the go, you needed to back up, individual VMs within like, Google Cloud and things of that nature. We have that capability with our endpoint backup with disaster recovery. This right here is a direct to cloud appliance free backup, right? It's for, very small businesses. They may have a couple remote servers, a couple cloud VMs. This right here might be a good option. It's not an option for everybody. There are a lot of times where appliance is going to be the faster, better way to make sure that you're protecting your data. But this is a gem when it comes to those servers that once again that are remote, or those laptops that don't have like a permanent home on a desk, that are, in the bag, out the bag. You're working from home one day, you're working from the office one day, you're working from the secondary office another day. This right here is a beautiful solution because it's not tied to an appliance. It's automatically doing that backup every time you get onto the network, and you're able to do cool things like do bare metal restores or virtualizations directly from the cloud. If something happened to that laptop, it breaks, you get a ransomware, hardware failure, whatever the case may be, you are covered. So it's pretty cool in that regard. So with this solution, it backs up every 2 hours. It's a mutable architecture with multi-factor authentication. Once again, multi-factor authentication is one of the many steps we have in place to make sure that we are protecting your data. And then over exabytes of data and continuously growing. How it works: you have your physical servers or virtual servers or cloud servers. It backs up directly to the Datto cloud, once again, every 2 hours. And in that cycle, you're able to restore from that Datto cloud as well. So very easy, hopefully simplistic, but a very good solution for those people who are in the situation where you have remote or distributed servers. And then we have Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace. So, um, like 95% of businesses are utilizing one of these two solutions. And what we have is our data SaaS protection, where you're able to back all of that up, right? So, when you look at Microsoft, right, and you have your Teams data, OneDrive, you have, your calendars, contacts, emails, all of these different things, right? Microsoft, once again, isn't backing that up. You need to make sure that you are doing your due diligence and making sure that all that data is backed up. Because Microsoft, what they do is they operate off what's called a shared responsibility model. A shared responsibility model means that, hey, I'm responsible for the cloud, right? You you're responsible for the management of what's in that cloud, right? And so that means that from a Microsoft standpoint, the application, OS, virtualization, hardware, network, all of those things I'm responsible for. So if there's a hardware failure, if there's software failure, if there's some sort of natural disaster, power outages, all of this stuff is things that I need to make sure are good as me being Microsoft. The things that you're responsible for is that anything that's user data, app, admin stuff, anything resulting in human error, programmatic errors, malicious insiders, external hackers, viruses, malware, all of that stuff are things that you are responsible for. And so, it plays a role when you take a look like, hey, what if you had a $1 million contract and you couldn't access the documents you needed because Microsoft was down, and you lose that contract? Microsoft isn't going to say, "Hey, my bad. I'm sorry. Sue me, or here's $1 million." No, they're going to say that, "Hey, they're not responsible for that, right? You're responsible for the data that's in their system, right?" They actually say once again, we're not liable for data loss due to due to application outages. Not liable for data loss due to deprovision of user accounts. And one I love the most is that we recommend that you regularly back up your content and data that you store on your services or store using third-party apps and services. So this is straight out of their EULA. So when you are, setting up your account and you say yes, 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 these are the things that you are signing away, right? That they are not responsible, and they are urging you to go and make sure that you have some sort of backup of this environment. So with this solution, right, and how we're able to protect against permanent data loss, it's a quick setup. We have tons of different flexibilities in terms of the different types of retention. Once again, different organizations, different industries have different expectations around data retention, so we can adhere to that. We are SOC 2 Type 2 audited. We are GDPR compliant. Once again, everything is encrypted as well. So the need for backup is greater than ever, right? So 20 ransom attacks are attempted every single second. 90% businesses are underinsured typically, right? So 90% covered over median 550K ransomware demand. So that's very, very low. And then compliance regulations are increasing. 116 global compliance frameworks mandate backup, right? So if you look at, GDPR, the Essential A, you look at NIST 2, there's all these different frameworks, right, that differ in their methodology and, the execution and what they expect. However, the thing that they all are pretty much aligned around is the need for backup, right? And backup is the last line of defense, but it should be the first security investment when it comes to making sure that you are protecting your data, because at the end of the day, the data is your business. So that's all I have. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free. And I'd love to answer those for you guys.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jason.
Time.
Yeah, I really like that it scans the backups that are going into the cloud um, for malware, because some services don't do that. And if you're just backing up to a hard drive and you've already got a virus, you're just backing up the hard drive or just backing up the virus. Um, and the same thing for if you're doing Mac Time Machine backups, Apple doesn't scan for malware on the
Mhm.
backups you're uploading.
Correct,
So
correct. So tons of redundancy, tons of different ways to look at making sure it's not just data we're getting, but we're protecting the correct data, and we're verifying and validating the data at multiple junctures. So
yeah, yep. And then yeah, and then the SaaS protection has saved us a couple times. Some disgruntled employees trying to leave and they try to delete everything out of their mailbox.
mm,
Before they do so, we've got the backups going back a year, so we can just pull that back out if they need it. And it
mhm.
covers the whole package. So you can also go into the OneDrive and the Google Drive and get files out of there if they're trying to delete things, because it'll only sit in the recycle bin for 30 days. So yeah, it's really nice to be able to go back a full year.
Ooh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, does anybody have any questions? You can type them in the chat if you want, or I think you should be able to unmute yourselves. I think I checked that. Uh, so the only other thing I had, let's see, share my screen again. Is that we do have our, oh, there we go. Is that we do have our 10-year ribbon cutting at the Burbank Chamber of Commerce this June, on June 12th, from 6 to 10 p.m. So be on the lookout for that. So we got started in 2015, and it's already been 10 years. So Hope you guys can all come to that.
Awesome.
Okay. Yeah, sounds like there's no questions. But yeah, if you have questions later, please feel free to email me. I'll send you my booking link if you want to get on a call. Just chat for 15 minutes about the data in your business and how you're protecting it. So, but yeah. All right, let me. Oh, there's something.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Let me stop.